When you can see union density, union membership decline for decades, as that decline has happened, inequality has skyrocketed. Wealth and income has concentrated at the top, which makes sense because if we as working people do not have power at the bargaining table, if we do not have that kind of ability to win back more of the labor or the value of the labor we create, then we see this cycle of inequality. Given the scale of the crisis we're facing in this state and in this country, multiple layers of crisis bearing down upon us, the only thing that's going to save us is a lot of people power, right? A people power on a scale we haven't seen in generations.
Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy now to have with us Adam Keller, who is the Worker Power Campaign Director from Alabama Rise. That is a mouthful thing. Do you have to put all that on a card? Is that, you hand out cards that say the Worker Power Campaign Director? I mean, it's a very, I'll say this, it's a very strong position. You know, you sound, I'm the Worker Power Campaign Director. You know, it sounds good. It rolls off the tongue.
I mean, we've got the union bug on the business card too. So, nice. It describes what I'm trying to do, what I'm all about, which is building more power for working people in this state because we deserve it. We don't deserve any less than anybody else. Yep. That's what's been motivating me, and I'm blessed to be at a Rise where I can do that full time.
Yeah, that's nice. That's kind of a new thing for a Rise, right? I mean, I know this is not what we've got you on to talk about, but that's kind of a little bit of a new direction for them and for them over there, because I don't think they've done anything quite like that in the past, have they?
Yeah, that's right. Worker power is the newest issue priority on our agenda. I started in this role launching the Worker Power campaign about a year and a half ago. And, really what we saw was that Alabama Rise, for over 3 decades, we've been advocating for the least of these, right? Those who are marginalized by poverty. We fight for better policies for the people. Well, we recognize that we can't just lobby from the top down. We can't just focus on policy. We actually have to organize working class people. Right. The vast majority of people in the state are working class, and they deserve more power on the job, at the ballot box, and in our communities. Yeah. So I do a little bit of everything from, connecting community, labor unions, and policy, trying to build bridges between them to just build more power for working folks from the shop floor to the State House.
We're going to get into this. We had you on to talk about the Public School Strong campaign that you're working on, and I know that kind of plays into this whole thing. But I sense, and I know you said you've been working on this campaign for 18 months, and that's about usual for me. I'm about 18 months behind on most things. But I have this sense that there has been, over the course of the last, I don't know how many years, but a few now, there has been a reappreciation for unions. For unionization, for workers' rights, for things along those lines, that there was a downward trend for a lot of years. There was a height of the unions at one point, I'm going to say probably the 70s, early 70s, and then there started a trend as it started to trickle down. And you can see as union participation started down, wage gap started up. And I mean, it is almost 1-for-1 line on that thing. But it seems like over the last few years, there have been a reappreciation for unionization. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think you're wrong at all. I think there is a new energy, particularly coming out of the pandemic. I think the COVID pandemic was an eye-opener for a lot of folks. We saw some really high-profile union organizing campaigns and worker struggles, including here in Alabama, right? We had the RWDSU trying to organize the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer. We had the Warrior Met coal strike, which was a long and very brutal strike, unfortunately, in terms of corporate intransigence. But we also have seen the United Auto Workers organizing in the auto industry throughout the South, successfully in Chattanooga at Volkswagen, which was huge. We've seen organizing, of course, at Mercedes and Hyundai here in the state. So I think, but zooming out nationally, there is a greater appreciation for the importance of the labor movement. You referred to this chart. I show that graph every time I do a workshop in the field because it really does say so much when you can see union density, union membership decline for decades. As that decline has happened, inequality has skyrocketed. Wealth and income has concentrated at the top, which makes sense because if we as working people do not have power at the bargaining table, if we do not have that kind of ability to win back more of the labor or the value of the labor we create, then we see this cycle of inequality. And so I think there is a greater appreciation among more and more political folks, even community folks who have never been exposed to a union in their own life, but they're starting to put two and two together. That given the scale of the crisis we're facing in this state and in this country, multiple layers of crisis bearing down upon us, the only thing that's going to save us is a lot of people power, right?
Yeah.
People power on a scale we haven't seen in generations. People power is what won the New Deal and labor rights to begin with. So what won the civil rights is what won women's suffrage. You can't have that level of people power without a revitalized labor movement front and center, right? Because that is where working people build our own institutions, where we build power in the workplace, where we spend most of our waking lives, and where we create and generate the wealth that spins this economy. So I think there is a new appreciation. It has not translated to membership numbers yet, unfortunately, but we've seen a lot of high profile campaigns. We've seen newer generations of labor activists getting involved, and we've seen, reform-minded leadership, such as Sean Fain at the UAW.
Yeah, no, and listen, I think too in there, one of the reasons why I believe, and I've written about this some, is that you haven't seen those numbers go up is because so many of these companies have been very reactionary to what is taking place in other unionized shops. When that happened in Chattanooga, for example, and the UAW was in Alabama trying to unionize a lot of those people, overnight the offers to the employees improved drastically out of this, and so they were, hey, listen, we're going to give you exactly what they're getting out of the union, but you don't have to pay the dues, and so those things they've staved off unionization in an effort to avoid that. And it's been very attractive because it is hard, because you go to these folks and say, hey, we're going to give you the same thing these folks in the union are getting, but you don't have to pay those dues. It's hard to convince those folks on the ground, look, if you pay those dues now, it's going to pay off for you in the future, 10, 15 years, and all of those future generations are going to benefit from it. And I think that's a tough sell when you're already giving them, what's there. But I think people need to recognize the benefit of the union that somebody else is paying into is the reason why you're getting all this stuff, right? And I mean, I think that eventually it's going to translate into those numbers, and we're going to get back there because I think people see the bullshit for what it is.
I think you're exactly right. And I think, we call that the UAW bump, right? Workers at Hyundai and Honda and across the country, after the UAW successfully went on strike against the big three automakers and won a record contract, after they successfully organized at Volkswagen in Chattanooga, a lot of these employers, they use carrots and they use sticks. And in this case, right, they use the carrots, they throw out the pay raises, to try to sweeten the deal, to try to get folks to, kind of calm down and think short term, to your point. And something else that's really worth mentioning here is that when you are a worker in a place like Alabama, you aren't just facing the boss, right? And the multinational corporations and their teams of lawyers and union busting consultants. You're facing virtually the entire state government, right? From the governor on down is opposed to what you're trying to do. And that is a big ask, to ask an ordinary working person to put themselves at risk of termination, of blacklisting, of discrimination, of all sorts of things, right? But what gives me hope is that I know we've done this before. At one time, 1 in 4 Alabama workers belonged to a labor union. At one time, Walker County, Alabama was the most unionized county in the entire country, right? So Alabama has a rich heritage of unionism and working class organizing and populism. A lot of that history has been kind of suppressed. But we've done this before. You know, unions are often portrayed as this foreign outside interest, right? That it's some
Yeah.
Yankee invention coming down here to mess with our way of life.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if you actually know a little bit about our history, unions are as Alabama as football and sweet tea.
Yep.
And I'm not going to let any boss or politician tell us otherwise.
Well, Adam, listening to you just makes me feel good because I know that you are standing, as far as I'm concerned, on the right side of that issue. You and Alabama Arise. And by the way, before I ask you my questions, I just got to say, Alabama Arise has been one of my favorite organizations for many, many years. So shout out to Robin Hayden and to Chris Sanders, who I've been dealing with on and off for years down there. You guys are doing great work. So let me ask you now about Public School Strong, because this is a campaign that Alabama Arise has joined that's a part of a larger national campaign. Tell us about it.
Yeah, you know, public school strong, it's what it sounds like, right? We're building strength for public education. We want to build a grassroots movement that really stands for honest, equitable, fully funded education for all kids. And it's really important that we organize because the other side, they're organizing, right? The billionaires and the bigots are very busy. They've been organizing around public schools for a long time. We've seen a new wave of this happening with groups like Moms for Liberty and other extremist groups that are, you know, causing chaos at school board meetings across the country. We know that in Alabama, public education has long been under threat, right? Public education is not something we can take for granted in the South, period, right? It grew out of Reconstruction and the struggles of Reconstruction. It has always been unevenly applied in our society. It has always been the subject of racial division. So we can't take public education for granted here in the South. But we know in Alabama, we've had, the Choose Act. We've had vouchers growing and growing. We've seen other attacks on educators in particular. I started teaching in 2012 as a high school history teacher, which was a weird time to get into public education because at the time, folks from both parties were championing all sorts of corporate education reform and privatization. Of course, we had the wave election of 2010. The Republican supermajority took over in Alabama. Some of their earliest initiatives were to go after public schools, right? To go after the retirement pension system, to go after tenure rights for educators, to go after dues deduction for the Education Association. Some of the steepest cuts to public education in the aftermath of the Great Recession. So that's what the environment that I entered in Huntsville City Schools, which was ground zero for privatization at the time. We had lost hundreds of support staff jobs to temp agencies. You know, these were brothers and sisters that used to have a pension and a health care plan that have been outsourced to temp agencies. And so we've seen privatization take hold in various forms, whether it's that sort of like inside the house privatization and outsourcing of services and staff and personnel. But of course, we've seen the growth of private school scholarships and voucher programs. And a lot of this has been wrapped up in really divisive culture war rhetoric, right? There are folks on talk radio, folks on far right media who are propagandizing their listeners and their audience against public education, telling them that, you know, teachers are propagandizing their children and trying to indoctrinate their children into, critical race theory, if they even know what that means, right? Spreading rumors of litter boxes and classrooms, you name it, right? And it's very well coordinated, and so ultimately, my whole experience in fighting for public education, whether it was as a rank and file educator or as a representative of educators or as just a parent now, what I've seen is the influence of money and segregation. And it's not just segregation by race, but religion, ability, class, right?
Sure.
There are some
Yeah.
folks who reject the very notion that public education is a public good for the common good, right? That
Yeah.
we all benefit. We all have something
Right.
invested. We all have a
Right.
stake, and we can't give up on public schools. They're too important to give up on. And so
Exactly.
that's why we're
So
doing this, really.
so let me ask you, what specifically are you doing? What when we talk about the public school strong campaign, what specifically are we talking about?
Yeah, I think for us, what we're trying to do in Alabama and what we've seen nationwide, because this is a national campaign that kicked off in North Carolina, spread to Tennessee, spread throughout the country now. And really the goal is to build local chapters, local teams at the district level. Uh, Much like the other side is organizing local school board level teams, we should be organizing local school board level teams who can attend school board meetings, who can attend school budget hearings, ask questions, hold folks accountable, but at the same time, connect the dots between what's happening locally with the state policy and the federal policy, right? Because that's
Okay.
something else to consider is that we have a White House that is very hostile to public education. The current proposed budget would take over $100 million of federal education funding from Alabama schools. And while that is not a huge amount in the grand context of the budget, right? Most public schools are funded primarily through local and state taxes.
Tax dollars, yeah.
Those federal programs are for the most marginalized students, those who are unhoused, those who are learning English, those who may not have a parent at home, those who may have disabilities and special needs. The goal here is to bring together rank and file educators, parents, community members, people who believe that, yes, we do need honest, fully funded, equitable public education for every child and are willing to step up and to organize around that. So it's a national framework, but it is an ability for folks to build their local teams and really develop leadership at the local level and work
So
together across the state.
Right. So we're really talking about organizing for advocacy and for monitoring and for the dissemination of information and to really, I said advocacy earlier, to really speak out to the public, to the school boards about the concerns that people have to try to influence policymaking, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, like I said, the opponents of public education are doing that. They are running for offices. They are pressuring school boards. They are submitting policy through the state legislature. They have allies in the White House. If ever there was a time for us to come together, those of us who care about our public schools, those of us who recognize the common good we have here, this is it, right? This is the time because we're seeing the way our schools are being slowly starved and sabotaged. It is no coincidence, right, that they have these solutions to quote unquote failing schools. Well, they help sabotage our public schools through underfunding, through various attacks on educators, and through just insufficient resources to meet the needs of our kids. Because let's not forget, Alabama is one of the poorest states in the country. Most of our kids are suffering with poverty or they're really, really close to it. And it's harder to educate kids and get those test scores up, right, when kids are hungry, when kids don't know if they have a place to sleep at night, when they're not sure the lights are going to be on. That's somebody's baby. But a lot of those legislators haven't thought about that, right? And so it's really important that parents and educators and community folks are able to build power together because that's our strength. We're never going to have the billionaires on our side. We're never going to have the force of lobbyists on our side like they have, but we can have the people. Our strength is in our numbers because at the end of the day, even with the growth of vouchers in private schools, roughly 90% of families rely on public education. Most families depend on public education in multiple ways in their life, and it's probably going to be one of the best government services they ever receive, right? And so we have to make that working class case for public education as well, because as working people, we depend on public schools, not just for our kids. It's also one of the largest employers in a lot of our counties.
Yep.
Right? It's one of the few places in some areas where you can find a decent job that has benefits. So, there's an economic aspect to it. There's a social aspect to it in terms of just really standing for all students, right? And not letting them pit folks against each other because they want us to throw some folks to the margins, but that's not what this is about. And there is, of course, just the aspect of our democracy. The founders of public education believed that having good public schools and having our communities educated in good public schools was kind of a big deal when it comes to a functioning democracy. Yeah. And so I think that is not to be lost in this either, that there is some interest among those who attack public education. I believe that I think it's fair to say that a lot of them do not believe in democracy in the same way that we do. And so, they don't have a vested interest in ensuring that the rank and file citizen has critical thinking, right? And has some, ability to sort out information and read and write successfully. So, I think we're facing really tough odds. But what makes me so hopeful is that most people really do care about public education. Most people want it to be better. And I think you've seen that where school vouchers have actually been on statewide ballots, such as in Kentucky or Nebraska. They failed overwhelmingly, even in Republican areas.
Yeah, every single time they fail. Every single time. Look, there are very few things that pisses me off like this issue here because it's so stupid. It really is so stupid when you boil it right down to it. People that go that send their kids to public school, they talk about those schools and those teachers in such glowing terms, as though they're family. We're part of a family, and and then some of those same people go into a Facebook world somewhere, and they're transformed into this craziness where there's litter boxes and they're indoctrinating your children with crazy. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But you're right. Ultimately, in that anytime you put this up for a vote, because they're stealing the money, and that's what a lot of this is about. There's this big giant pool of money that goes to public education. And for years and years and years, a lot of, we'll just call them conservatives, have dreamed of getting their grubby little hands on this big pot of money so they could dole it out to their friends. And that's what they're doing with school choice right now. I mean, let's be honest. That's what they're doing. When you have a set of standards that we've lived by for decades, and we all know what those standards are, the standardized tests that we all take, and you've got to achieve a certain level. And if you're not, then people come in and you have all sorts of changes that go on, and you have to, that's what your funding's all based on. That's why all the schools freak out about this and has been for years now. That's what the funding of public schools is based on. And then you take, and you're going to give that same money to these people over here who aren't beholden to anywhere close to those same standards. It's bullshit. I mean, it's a bullshit money grab. That's all it is. So, but I would walk away feeling as though I had to kick myself if I did not ask, because we have an organization in this state that was once the most powerful organization in this state, is the Alabama Education Association. And I know that they've split, and one is a union for teachers, and then there's the organization itself. Where are they on this movement with y'all?
I think the door is open for anyone and everyone who wants to join.
He's learned the ways of being diplomatic. I like it.
Yes. I think the door is open for anyone and everyone who wants to join this movement and fight for public education. I think the key to our success will be the rank and file.
Yes.
It's not, convincing executive directors or presidents or people with big titles. It's the rank and file folks who are out there directly impacted by policy and directly impacting human lives every day. Yeah. And so, I hear what you're saying, and I will say that In my organizing experience, when I worked for AEA in Huntsville, my greatest success in defending our members and the students they served was when we built coalitions. When it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just me and a few teachers and librarians, but we had grandparents. We had uncles and aunties there with us. We had church folks there with us. We had community activists and advocates there with us. When we had a broad coalition, when we showed up to those school budget hearings decked out in our red t-shirts and we were 30, 40 deep and the news was there, it made a difference. Yeah. People paid attention. And I think that's what I want folks to walk away from this with, that every single person listening can do something. Whether that is attending a board meeting, whether that's writing a letter to the editor, whether that's sharing information on social media, getting plugged in with our discussion groups online. There are so many ways to plug in. So, I think we know that the landscape is pretty bleak in a lot of ways for educators. They're hungry for change, right? Mm-hmm. They've been under attack for over a decade now. And I mentioned earlier, I started teaching in 2012, and not only was that a sort of a bad time for public education down here, but it was also the same year the Chicago Teachers Union went on their historic strike for the school Chicago students deserved. Yeah. And for me, that was a light bulb moment, because I was looking around at the issues we were facing, my students, our families. They weren't that different. Sure, yeah. Chicago and Huntsville, Alabama have a lot, that is different. But the reality is we're struggling with a lot of the same issues from a lot of the same opponents nationally, globally. And that was a light bulb moment for me, that through militant democratic worker organizing, when we organize from the bottom up, when we get the rank and file informed and educated and agitated and really up and moving, and then we build those coalitions with the parents, with the students, with the community folks, right? It wasn't just the Chicago teachers out there by themselves. They had the community behind them, and they were able to take on one of the most powerful mayors in the entire country and win. And win real win-win demands, too, not just for pay raises and better health care, but for school libraries, right? School nurses, social workers, smaller class sizes, the kinds of things that really make a difference in people's lives. Because, a lot of these policymakers forget that the educators' working conditions are the students' learning conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, look, man, we'll get you out of here because I know you got to go, and so do we. But God bless you for what you're doing, because it should have been better done long before now. Okay, and it once was very well done, and then they decided that the best course of action was not making too many people so mad about these things, and not rocking any boats. And and in the meantime, we've seen teachers organize in Tennessee and in Kentucky. I mean, God knows in Kentucky, where they elected a Democrat because they threatened to cut their pay and their benefits for teachers. That's how Andy Beshear got to be Andy Beshear, was because he listened to the teachers union in Kentucky, and that's what pushed him over the top. And we've failed. We have failed these good people that we all love and respect in our schools, in our community schools that we all love and everybody talks about in glowing terms. We failed every single one of them by allowing this to take place and allowing them to be vilified, allowing them to be painted as some liberals or whatever, and not the caretakers of our children and the folks who are doing their damnedest to educate our kids and provide them with the knowledge to go out in the world and be better people. And that's who they are. They're the people in your community you go to church with, or you see at the restaurants, who you love and who you trust to take care of your kids every day. You've allowed them to be vilified and turned into something, and now you're letting them steal their damn money. But man, thank you, Adam, for what y'all are doing. And we're going to keep beating the drum here as well. And I hope y'all will keep it up and come back and let us know how it's going, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate it, guys. And I just want to encourage folks to go to publicschoolstrong.org, follow it, get plugged in, reach out to me. This build power, build a future we can actually believe in and save public education for the next generation, y'all.
Let's do it.
All right,
Let's
Adam.
absolutely do
Thanks,
it. Thank
brother.
you, Adam. We really
Appreciate
appreciate you, man. You and Alabama will rise as well. We really do.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to slide out. We'll come back in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week. Back in a moment.